The dream of many animators, creating their own series or show, be it online, Netflix or TV, often assumed to be out of the realm of reality by most, I'm sure, equal to the hypotheticals if I had $1 million or if I could choose a superpower. But for those of us that want to bite the bullet and really try to set our creativity loose with the idea of being a showrunner, I have a bit of advice that may come in handy. And some of you may just realise that this lofty dream of creative fulfillment is already within your grasp. You just haven't realised it yet. My name's Zach Sheridan. I'm an animator based in the UK, currently studying in university, and this is a video to hopefully answer the question of how to make a pilot episode, how to sell it, and what to look out for. I'll start by clarifying that I don't actually have much personal experience in the business of selling a pilot. However, I have begun a campaign to fund my own animated film project online, which I will bring up slightly later. So to answer these questions, I'm using the information provided by more experienced sources and analysing the already public pilot episodes for certain animated series you may or may not have heard of. With that established, I'll get into the first point. The first question you may ask yourself is my idea marketable in the first place? The answer is absolutely, assuming you know your audience. All stories can and should be told, but they won't mean the same thing for everyone. That's why we split audiences into different demographics. A story about a flower learning to spell with the power of friendship is great to teach a child the alphabet. However, if you intended it for an audience of 18 and older, the joy they glean may not be the same kind you intended. Of course, that likely seems obvious to most people. However, it's important to truly drill in which audience you're creating the series for before you begin attempting to present it to any businesses. If you just have the ingrained idea that your project will probably be a 16, but it ends up being approved for 18 years and up, you'll have unintentionally left quite a dent in your marketing, and worse still, if you intended the plot to appeal to the younger end of that demographic, you've accidentally alienated your own audience. Now, the most important thing you need to sell a pilot is the pitch bible, or pitch package, the culmination of every single detail you need for your series. Examples of things you need in your pitch package are logline/synopsis, character biographies, and episode summaries for the first series. While you only need to break down the first series, you will need to be ready to explain where the show can go afterwards, so the network can be sure that you won't flounder after the first 12 episodes. Your pitch package has to be able to thoroughly explain your project with zero input from you, so if there's anything you've not brought up in there, the people you're sending it to will simply not have that information. So be thorough. You don't want an executive saying your show is the best 2D action cartoon they've ever heard of, and then have to tell them it's actually a stop-motion horror show. So ensure you have even the most obvious things described in the pitch. This actually brings me to one of the tripping points for some projects. Don't hide anything about your project, even if you've got an expertly crafted plot twist that completely dazzles anyone reading the story outline. You've got to disclose the ending to the people you're selling it to. Being coy about the reason your villain is acting the way he is and telling the network executives you don't want to spoil anything is a surefire way to irritate them, not intrigue them. So, you've got your pitch package. Now the other thing you need to bring with you is passion. You have to have that drive to push through a wall when you see a problem. And when you don't see one, you need to have the drive to look for a problem that you may not have considered. Passion is what indie creators use in lieu of money. It's the reason they go on for a project that may not ever succeed. And if you're only coming up with a show in order to sell it and make money, people can feel that lack of passion when compared to other creators that put their heart and soul into their ideas. Got all that sorted? Well, if you've got the team, funds, or dedication, perhaps it's time to consider a pilot. Basically episode 0 of your show. An episode that can summarize what you believe the show is all about, the kind of humor, style, storytelling, etc. It may not be set in stone, so you shouldn't get too attached to the current form. Looking at the pilots of Final Space and Gravity Falls is a good example. Their humor and storytelling are practically identical, but their visuals are clearly less developed than the final series of each. More interesting still, both pilots don't act as introductions to the world by any means either. Gravity Falls is a pilot that takes place in media res, or in the middle of the story. This means it doesn't need to spend time establishing anything, and shows what the majority of the show will entail. Final Space takes it one step further, with its pilot being a sort of alternative ending, leaving a lot of things up in the air to entice people watching and get them intrigued as to what is the characters talking about. The pilot can get away with mystery unlike the pitch, as it's not intended as a breakdown for the show. It's intended to get the audience to want more episodes. There are plenty of pilots online for you to look into. It's interesting to compare and contrast what changed about each one, both stylistically and in terms of plot. There's also one more pilot many people probably are thinking about when it comes to ones that were recently released, which I'll be discussing shortly. Now, assuming you've got everything for your show completely wrapped up, the characters are fleshed out, the plot is planned for at least a few series, but now what? How are you going to get that interview you were looking for? This is the tough part, as it's 1 part connections to 2 parts luck. The famous saying always went, it's not what you know, but who you know. However, I'd argue it could be reworded. It's not what you know, but who knows you. You can't just walk up to an industry professional, introduce yourself, and end up with a job landed. They have to want to know you. You have to make an impression on them to make them think of you without you bugging them. Usually the people selling a show are people the network may have connections with already. Animators, scriptwriters, and artists they've worked with before in the past. What better way to know if this hopeful showrunner is worth the interview time than if you already know and respect what they do? This is how the likes of Butch Hartman got their shows on the air, leading to him creating and pitching Fairly Odd Parents. Obviously that's not an option for many of us that have yet to or don't want to work as an underling for years in an animation studio. So there's one thing that can immediately get a bigwig exec's attention, and that's, well, attention. Proof that other people value your ideas already is a surefire way to get what you make clout. Looking at Olin Rogers, creator of Final Space, the pilot for that was on YouTube 2 years before the release of the first season, and it was getting popular. This definitely helped networks see it and eventually allowed Netflix to pick it up. Because if you have a community following what you make or a social media presence that engage with you, your web of popularity may eventually catch the eyes of a professional, with little to no interference from you personally. Even if they didn't approach him based on this, it definitely helped his case in proving that people want more Final Space. In fact, this raises another glaring issue with the narrative that I've been presenting in this essay. If I already have an audience, why should I sell my pilot to someone else? This brings me on to the alternative option for what you can do with your series. Selling your pilot or series to an online audience is quite a bit different to selling it to a network. Where getting a pilot picked up on a network is like hitting your idea against a wall until it falls over. Selling it online without an already established audience is more like shooting ideas at a wall with a bow and arrow. Knocking the wall over with your idea only needs one big push, but it's tough and your idea will probably not look the same by the end of it. Shooting your idea at the wall is relatively painless, but you've got to keep doing it, probably with very little progress each time, but keep on chipping away and the wall should still break. Not nearly as nicely, but it can be made to work. Let's look at the example that may be fresh in many people's minds, Has Been Hotel. Has Been Hotel is an animated series being released on YouTube by Vivian Medrano, also known as vivziepop. It's an animation aimed at older audiences, about a demon in hell trying to rehabilitate sinners to get them into heaven. That sounds like it could work for all audiences, but the show does not shy away from the types of sin these characters commit on a daily basis. If Vivian tried to sell this to a network, you can bet that it wouldn't be as simple as one of the main characters is also a gay spider that dresses like a woman. The discussion of the ramifications of each of those aspects would no doubt be talked about at length by a board of directors, and more than likely would end with at least one of them being tweaked or completely removed. And recently, a new problem has also arrived for the YouTube animators, this being in the form of COPPA, an acronym for Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Innocently being for the purpose of protecting children online from non-family friendly content, COPPA has unintentionally caused trouble for those trying to make a living posting any kind of content online. Simply put, when posting videos online, the person now has to define whether their video is child-friendly. This in turn affects how it is advertised on the platform. However, YouTube famously does not cater terribly well to content aimed at adults, so saying your content is as such is like pointing out your own car to a parking attendant so they can give you a ticket. Speaking of fines, there is punishment for incorrectly assigning your video, so mature videos claimed to be okay for young viewers are not an option. The fines aren't small either, going up to $42,000. The worst part is you can even be fined for saying your content is mature when it isn't mature enough, apparently $42K being an acceptable number for those not letting young Timmy experience their comedy sketch. That's not the worst of it though. Animators have had a hard time with YouTube for years due to the very nature. Animation is long and arduous. Even after months of work, you can only expect to make about a 2-minute animation. This does not give animators any kind of livable returns in a world focused on viewer retention time compared to how easy it is to create content like video game commentary. So animators usually take to heavily reducing the amount of detail or the amount of animation in their animations. Digressing aside, if YouTube isn't ideal for animators to earn a living, which it isn't, the next bastion to keep online animators afloat is Patreon, the thing you probably hear a lot of people talking about at the end of their videos. Simply put, if you like a creator's content, you sign up for a monthly or per video pledge of money to keep them creating. This has taken over as many people's main source of income. Going back to vivziepop and Has Been Hotel, that entire project is more or less kept afloat through Patreon alone. Alternatively, if the monthly pressure to create is too much, or you only have one project you want to fund, maybe Kickstarter is the option for you. One set total needed to fund either an episode or maybe a series, then people pledge based on the rewards you offer, and if you don't get funded, you lose nothing but a bit of time. Hey, even I've made a project for my animated thesis film on here. Now, I hope I've given everyone watching this the help they need to decide on which place they wish to pursue showing off their animated darlings. To conclude, there is absolutely no correct answer on which to pursue for your creative outlet. You could even change after hitting it off with one. There are a few animators popular for their animation on TV that have swapped to YouTube. Looking at you again, Butch. With that all said, preparing your pilot or pitch takes time, but the most important necessity to eventually sell your show is the ability to keep hitting it against that wall in whichever way you choose. If you are determined, I'm sure eventually it'll go down, and on the other side, hopefully you'll find a field of opportunity. I'm not quite there yet either, so hopefully we'll see each other there again in the future. Thanks for watching.